In the marble halls of Lennox Academy, a seemingly perfect student was about to shatter everything she thought she knew about love. What started as a routine morning assembly took a shocking turn when she came face to face with the algorithm that controlled her destiny. Tessa Monroe wasn't your typical boarding school princess. For 17 years, she had spent her life following the script others wrote for her, known for her unwavering loyalty to friends who didn't deserve it. When she encountered the social pairing protocol's supposedly flawless match with Blaine Calloway, she had no idea she was walking into a web of manipulation that would cost her everything. Tessa's blind trust in the system that would lead to heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately death. What began as algorithmic romance would become a supernatural second chance. The prestigious academy would never be the same after she chose love over lies, truth over perfection, and the girl everyone dismissed over the boy everyone wanted. But this time, armed with the knowledge of how her story ends, Tessa Monroe was rewriting the rules entirely. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. If this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The smell hit me first. That specific blend of industrial, floor cleaner, and teenage anxiety that always clung to the air at Lennox Academy. It was the scent of my own undoing. I stood in the marble-floored hallway watching through the glass doors of the administrative office as the ghost of my past played out in perfect, terrifying detail. There she was, Chloe Ardent, my best friend forever and ever, her perfectly straightened blonde hair catching the morning light as she leaned over a tablet, her manicured finger tracing algorithmic patterns across the screen. The social pairing protocol interface, the beginning of my end. Déjà vu is a funny thing. It's supposed to be a glitch, a flicker of the unfamiliar feeling familiar. For me, it was a high-definition replay with the director's commentary track enabled. I could see the exact moment she'd look up, catch my eye through the glass, and wave me over with that practiced smile that had once made me feel chosen. 3, 2, 1. Tessa. Her voice carried that perfect note of excitement, the kind that made everyone in earshot turn to see what they were missing. Get over here. You have to see this. I approached the office with measured steps, my heart hammering against my ribs. In my original life, I'd rush toward her, eager to be included in whatever scheme she was cooking up. This time, I walked like someone heading toward their own execution, which in a way, I was. The system just finished processing our junior. Your social optimization, Chloe said, her eyes bright with the kind of predatory intelligence that she'd learned to mask behind bubbly enthusiasm. And oh my God, Tess, you're going to die when you see who it paired you with. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had died, quite literally in fact, after discovering that this same optimization had been rigged from the start. Really? I asked, injecting just the right amount of curious excitement into my voice. Who, Blaine Calloway? She said his name like she was announcing lottery numbers. I mean, I know he's technically available since he and that weird girl broke up over the summer. But the system thinks you two are basically soulmates. That weird girl, Naomi Vega, the girl who tried to warn me about Blaine's true nature, who I dismissed as jealous and bitter. The girl who'd watched me fall apart from the sidelines, who'd seen my tears in the bathroom mirror and asked if I was okay, the only person who'd bothered to ask. Blaine Calloway, I repeated, letting a little breathlessness creep into my voice. Seriously? Chloe's smile widened. In my first life, I'd thought it was genuine happiness for me. Now I could see it for what it was, satisfaction at a plan coming together. The algorithm is never wrong about these things. I mean, look at the compatibility metrics. She turned the tablet toward me, and I saw the fabricated data points, the manipulated preference scores that made us look like a perfect match. I'd helped Sloan Kim hack into these same files in another timeline, in another life. I'd seen Chloe's admin overrides her mother's senatorial access codes, the way she'd puppet mastered every supposedly random pairing. But that was then. This was now. And now, I was going to let her win. This is incredible, I said, and meant it. It was incredible, the sheer audacity of it, the meticulous planning, the way she'd convinced me I was lucky to be chosen. Do you think he'll actually be interested? Are you kidding? Chloe laughed, that crystalline sound that had once made me feel like I was part of something special. "Have you seen yourself lately? You're gorgeous, you're smart, and you're—" She paused, her eyes calculating. "You're perfect for him. Perfect for him. Not perfect for me. Perfect for him." The distinction was important, though I'd missed it the first time around. "Besides," she continued, "I may have mentioned to him that you thought he was cute. Just to plant the seed." The memory hit me like a physical blow. I'd confided in her about my silly little crush on Blaine during one of our late-night phone calls, and she'd immediately started scheming. I'd thought she was being a good friend, helping me get the guy. Now I knew she'd been positioning pieces on a chessboard with me as the pawn. "Chloe," I said, grabbing her arm with what I hoped looked like grateful emotion. "You're the best friend in the world." She preened under the praise, her smile turning almost predatory. "That's what I'm here for. We're going to make sure you get everything you deserve." Everything I deserved. In my first life, what I'd deserved was heartbreak, betrayal, and a final, devastating realization that sent me running blindly into traffic. In this life, I was going to deserve something different. Something better. But first, I had to play the game. "I should probably go find him," I said, glancing at my reflection in the office window. "Do I look okay?" "You look perfect," Chloe said. And for once, she wasn't lying. I did look perfect, perfectly naive, perfectly trusting, perfectly ready. To be destroyed. As I walked away from the office, I caught sight of a familiar figure at the end of the hallway. Jace, my brother. Alive and whole, and completely unaware that in 18 months, the weight of secrets and manipulated relationships would drive him to jump from the roof of the dormitory. He was laughing at something his friend had said, his dark hair falling across his eyes the way it always did when he was genuinely happy. I had to save him. I had to save us both. To do that, I had to let everything else play out exactly as it had before, at least for now. The bell rang, signaling the start of first period. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and walked toward my destiny. Again, advanced placement psychology was held in the observatory, a glass-walled room at the top of Lennox Academy's North Tower. In my first life, I'd loved this class, the way Dr. Rowe challenged us to think beyond the obvious, to question the systems that shaped our behavior. Now, as I climbed the spiral staircase to the classroom, I felt like I was ascending toward my own judgment. I paused at the doorway, scanning the room. There, in the back corner by the windows, sat Naomi Vega. She was exactly as I remembered, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, its oversized sweater that looked like it had been stolen from someone's grandfather, and those sharp green eyes that seemed to see everything. She was alone as always, with an empty chair on either side of her, like she was radioactive. In my first life, I'd taken my assigned seat in the middle of the room, surrounded by Chloe's carefully curated social circle. I'd spent the entire semester stealing glances at Naomi, fascinated by her brilliant contributions to class discussions, but never brave enough to actually speak to her. Chloe had made it clear that Naomi was difficult, antisocial, probably mentally unstable. I'd believed her because I'd wanted to believe her, because it was easier than questioning why someone so obviously intelligent and insightful would be so thoroughly isolated. Oh, I knew better. I walked directly to the back of the room and slid into the seat beside her. The surprise on her face was immediate and unmistakable, eyes widening, shoulders tensing like a deer caught in headlights. "Is anyone sitting here?" I asked, even though I was already settling in. "No," but she glanced around the room, clearly confused. "Don't you usually sit with your friends?"
"Hi, friends."
Chloe had claimed the center of the room, surrounded by her usual entourage of carefully selected allies. She was staring at me with barely concealed alarm, her perfectly glossed lips pressed into a thin line. I could practically hear her thoughts. What is she doing? Why is she sitting with her? "I wanted a better view," I said, gesturing toward the windows. It wasn't entirely a lie. From here, I could see the entire campus spread out below Worcester. Manicured lawns, the academic buildings, the dormitories where students were sorted and paired and manipulated like lab rats in a maze. Naomi's eyes narrowed. Right. Because sitting next to the school pariah is totally about the view. The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut. I turned to face her fully, studying the defensive set of her shoulders, the way she was. Already pulling her notebook closer to her chest, like armor. "I don't think you're a pariah," I said quietly. "No." She let out a short laugh that held no humor. "Just crazy then. Antisocial, bitter. I'm sure you've heard all the greatest hits." I had heard them. I'd believed them. I'd even repeated some of them, parroting Chloe's carefully crafted narrative about poor, unstable Naomi who couldn't handle being dumped by Blaine Calloway. The memory of my own participation in her isolation made my stomach turn. "I think," I said carefully, "that people talk too much and listen too little." Something shifted in her expression, surprise, maybe, or cautious hope. That's unexpectedly philosophical. Don't sound so shocked. I do have thoughts beyond lip gloss and boyfriend drama. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, carrying the weight of years of being underestimated, of being seen as Chloe's pretty but vapid sidekick. Naomi blinked, clearly taken aback by the edge in my voice. I didn't mean forget it. I softened my tone, not wanting to scare her away when I'd barely begun to build this bridge. "I'm just tired of being predictable." Dr. Rowe entered the room, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, her dark eyes scanning the class with the intensity of someone who'd seen too much and trusted too little. She'd been one of the original developers of the social pairing protocol, back when it was supposed to be a tool for helping students form genuine connections. I wondered if she knew what it had become, how it was being used to manipulate and control rather than nurture. "Today we're discussing the psychology of social conformity," she announced, her voice carrying easily through the room. "Who can tell me about the Ash experiments?" Several hands shot up, including mine. "But Dr. Rowe's gaze settled on Naomi, who hadn't raised her hand but was sitting forward with obvious interest. "Ms. Vega, what do you think?" "The Ash experiments demonstrated that people will conform to group pressure even when they know the group is wrong," Naomi said, her voice clear and confident. Subjects would give obviously incorrect answers to simple questions just to avoid standing out from the crowd. It showed that the fear of social rejection is often stronger than the desire to be right. Excellent. And what does this tell us about the nature of truth in social environments? Naomi's eyes flicked to me, then back to Dr. Rowe.
That truth
Is often less important than belonging. People would rather be wrong together than right alone. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd been one of those people, hadn't I? I'd conformed to Chloe's version of reality, accepted her narrative about Naomi, about Blaine, about what kind of person I was supposed to be. I'd chosen belonging over truth, comfort over courage, Miss Monroe, Dr. Rowe said, and I realized she was looking at me. "What's your perspective on this?" I glanced at Naomi, who was watching me with those sharp green eyes, waiting to see what I'd say. This was a test, I realized. Not just from Dr. Rowe, but from Naomi herself. Would I give the safe answer, the expected answer? Or would I tell the truth? "I think," I said slowly, "that sometimes people conform because they're afraid of what they'll find if they stand alone. But maybe being alone with the truth is better than being surrounded by lies." The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Dr. Rowe nodded approvingly. But it was Naomi's reaction that mattered to me. She was staring at me with something like recognition, as if she was seeing me for the first time. Class continued, but I found it hard to concentrate on anything other than the girl sitting beside me. She smelled like vanilla and old books, and when she took notes, her handwriting was small and precise. Occasionally, she'd glance in my direction, and I'd catch those green eyes studying me with undisguised curiosity. When the bell rang, signaling the end of the period, I made no move to leave. Naomi was packing her things slowly, clearly waiting for me to go first, so she could avoid any awkward interaction. "Naomi," I said, and she froze. "I know we don't really know each other, but I remember you tried to warn me about something once, about Blaine." Her entire body went rigid. "I don't know what you're talking about." I could see the truth in her eyes, she remembered. It had been in the bathroom after a particularly humiliating encounter where Blaine had flirted with another girl right in front of me, then dismissed my hurt feelings as dramatic. Naomi had been washing her hands at the sink when I'd burst. In crying and furious, "He's not worth it," she'd said quietly. He's never been worth it. Asterisk. I'd turned on her then, accused her of being jealous, of trying to sabotage my relationship because she couldn't handle being replaced. I'd said cruel things, things that had made her face go white and her hands shake. Then I'd stormed out, leaving her alone with my words hanging in the air like poison. I was terrible to you, I said now, the words coming out in a rush. I was so caught up in my own drama that I couldn't see you were trying to help. I'm sorry. Naomi's hand stilled on her notebook. Why are you telling me this? 'Cause you were right. About Blaine. About everything. And I was too stupid and selfish to listen. She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching my face. What changed? Everything. I died. I came back. I learned that my best friend was my worst enemy, and the boy I thought I loved was just using me for social currency. I discovered that the girl I'd dismissed as bitter and jealous was actually the only person who'd tried to save me from myself. I grew up, I said instead. Naomi shouldered her bag and stood, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Be careful, Tessa. People don't change overnight. Some people don't change at all. She walked away without another word, leaving me alone in the empty classroom with the weight of her warning settling over me like a shroud. The assembly hall buzzed with the particular energy of forced enthusiasm that came with mandatory school gatherings. I sat in my assigned seat 3 rows from the front center section, surrounded by Chloe's carefully orchestrated social circle, and watched the stage where Principal Whitmore was introducing the weekly social optimization showcase. This was the part I'd forgotten about in my first life, probably because I'd been too nervous about my impending public pairing with Blaine to pay attention to anything else. Now, watching from the perspective of someone who'd lived through the consequences, I could see the ceremony for what it really was, a performance designed to make manipulation look like destiny. As you know, Principal Whitmore was saying, his voice carrying easily through the hall's advanced sound system. The social pairing protocol has been instrumental in fostering meaningful connections within our student body. Today we'll be announcing several new matches that our AI has identified as particularly promising. I felt Chloe's hand squeeze my arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging in just slightly. This is it, she whispered, her voice vibrating with excitement. Are you ready? Ready for what? Ready to be humiliated? Ready to be used? Ready to have my heart broken by a boy who'd already decided I was just a means to an end? I think so, I said, injecting just the right amount of nervous anticipation into my voice. The first few pairings were announced to polite applause. A senior couple, a pair of junior friends who'd been matched for a study partnership, a sophomore who'd been assigned a senior mentor. Each announcement was accompanied by a brief explanation of the algorithm's reasoning, complete with compatibility metrics and shared interest percentages. It all sounded so scientific, so objective, so legitimate. And now, Principal Whitmore continued, we have a particularly exciting romantic pairing. The system has identified 2 students whose psychological profiles and personal values align in almost unprecedented ways, Tessa Monroe and Blaine Calloway. The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. I could hear Chloe cheering beside me, could feel the eyes of the entire student body turning toward where I sat. On the screen behind, Principal Whitmore, my school photo, appeared next to Blaine's, along with a chart showing our supposed compatibility scores. 97%. Higher than any pairing in the school's history. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling like they were made of jelly. This was the moment I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Across the hall, Blaine was rising. From his seat, that easy smile spreading across his face as he looked in my direction. He was exactly as I remembered him, tall, blonde, effortlessly handsome in that way that made girls forget to breathe. He'd always known the effect he had on people, and he'd never hesitated to use it. We met at the center of the stage, and I could hear the whispers rippling through the audience. Some excited, some envious, some, if I listened carefully, skeptical. Blaine took my hand, his touch warm and slightly damp with nerves. Or maybe that was excitement. With him, it was always hard to tell. Tessa Monroe, he said, his voice pitched low enough that only I could hear it. The algorithm has excellent taste. Flattery will get you everywhere, I replied, matching his tone. I'm counting on it. The crowd was eating it up. I could see phone cameras flashing. Could already imagine the social media posts that would be flooding the school's networks within minutes. Tessa and Blaine, the perfect couple, algorithmically matched and publicly blessed. It was everything I'd wanted in my first life, and everything I'd learned to fear in my second. As we stood there, hands clasped, smiling for the cameras, I caught sight of a familiar figure in the back of the hall. Naomi was standing near the exit, her arms crossed over her chest, her expression unreadable. For a moment, our eyes met across the sea of faces, and I saw something flicker in her gaze. Disappointment, maybe, or resignation. Then she turned and walked out, leaving me alone on the stage with the boy who destroyed my life. The ceremony continued, but I barely heard it. My mind was replaying that moment, that look in Naomi's eyes. She'd been watching me, I realized, waiting to see what I'd do. I'd done exactly what she'd expected, played along with the game, let myself be paired up and paraded around like a prize. After the assembly ended, I found myself surrounded by well-wishers and congratulations. Chloe was practically vibrating with excitement, her cheeks flushed with the success of her machinations. I can't believe it actually worked, she said, pulling me aside as the crowd began to disperse. I mean, I knew the algorithm would match you too, but seeing it happen... God, Tess, you're so lucky. Lucky. That was one word for it. I still can't quite believe it, I said, which was true enough. It feels like something out of a movie. The best kind of movie, Chloe agreed. The kind where the heroine gets everything she wants. Everything she wants. Not everything I wanted. Everything she wanted me to want. Blaine appeared at my elbow, having extracted himself from his own crowd of admirers. So, Miss Monroe, he said, offering me his arm with theatrical gallantry, I believe we have a date with destiny. What? Is that what we're calling it? I asked, taking his arm because everyone was watching, because it was expected, because I was still playing the role of the girl who'd been swept off her feet by algorithmic romance. I prefer to think of it as fate, he said, his eyes twinkling with what looked like genuine warmth. After all, what are the odds that two people could be so perfectly matched? What were the odds? When the system was rigged, when every metric, it was manipulated, when your best friend was pulling strings behind the scenes to orchestrate your downfall. The odds were exactly 100%. But I smiled and nodded and let him lead me out of the assembly hall, past the clusters of students who were still talking about the dramatic pairing, past the teachers who were smiling approvingly at this success story of modern matchmaking technology. We walked across the quad toward the student center. I found myself scanning the faces we passed, looking for one in particular. I spotted her near the library steps, Naomi, sitting alone with a book open in her lap, her dark hair falling across her face like a curtain. She didn't look up as we passed, but I could feel her awareness of us, could sense the tension in her shoulders. She's watching you, Blaine said, following my gaze. Who? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Naomi, my ex. He said it casually, but there was something underneath the words, a sharpness maybe, or a warning. She's been staring at you all week. It's kind of creepy, actually. I wanted to defend her. Wanted to tell him that Naomi wasn't creepy. She was just observant. She was just paying attention to things that other people missed. But I couldn't say that without breaking character, without revealing that I knew more than I should about the girl, who tried to warn me. Maybe she's just curious, I said instead, about the match. Blaine's grip on my arm tightened slightly. Maybe. Or maybe she's having trouble letting go. Some people don't handle rejection well. The irony was almost funny. Here he was, warning me about Naomi's inability to handle rejection, and he was the one who'd ghosted her, who'd dropped her the moment something better came along. But I nodded and made appropriately sympathetic noises, because that's what the old Tessa would have done. As we reached the student center, Blaine turned to face me, his hands coming up to rest on my shoulders. Tessa, he said, his voice serious now, I want you to know that I'm not taking this lightly. This match, this opportunity to get to know you, it means something to me. And for a moment, looking into his earnest blue eyes, I almost believed him, almost forgot that I'd lived through this before, that I knew how it ended. Almost let myself fall back into the fantasy of being chosen, of being wanted, of being the girl who got the prince. It means something to me too, I said, and that was the truth. It meant everything. It meant revenge, justice, the chance to rewrite a story that had ended in tragedy. It meant the beginning of the end of Chloe's reign of manipulation. It meant I was exactly where I needed to be. As Blaine leaned in to kiss me, I caught one last glimpse of Naomi over his shoulder. She was still sitting by the library, still watching, and this time, when our eyes met, I saw something different in her expression. Not disappointment or resignation, but recognition. As if she knew somehow that I was playing a deeper game than anyone realized. The kiss was soft and sweet and completely hollow. I closed my eyes and kissed him back and told myself that this was just the beginning. That sometimes you had to let yourself be the bait in order to catch the real predator. But as I stood there in Blaine's arms, surrounded by the whispers and sighs of our audience, all I could think about was the girl by the library steps and the way she'd looked at me like she could see straight through to my soul. The computer lab at Lennox Academy was a temple to technological accessories of high-end workstations arranged in perfect symmetry, each one worth more than most people's cars. At this hour, well past dinner time, it should have been empty. Instead, I found exactly who I was looking for hunched over a keyboard in the back corner. Fingers flying across the keys with a kind of focused intensity that made mere mortals feel inadequate. Sloane Kim didn't look up when I entered. She never looked up when anyone entered. My first life, I'd barely noticed her. She was just another academic overachiever. Someone who existed in the margins of my Chloe-centered universe. Now, I could see her for what she really was. The most dangerous person at Lennox Academy. Not because she was cruel or manipulative, but because she was brilliant, skeptical, completely immune to the social hierarchies that governed the rest of us. Working late? I asked, sliding into the chair beside her. Sloane's fingers paused for exactly 1 second before resuming their rhythm. Depends on your definition of work. I'm currently reverse engineering the grade distribution algorithm to prove that, Professor. Martinez is artificially inflating the averages in advanced calculus. Is he? Oh, absolutely. The question is whether he's doing it consciously or if the system is just poorly calibrated. She finally looked at me, her dark eyes sharp with curiosity. More interesting question. What's Tessa Monroe doing in the computer lab at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday? Shouldn't you be somewhere romantic with your algorithmically perfect boyfriend? There it was, that particular brand of intellectual condescension that had once made me dismiss her as a know-it-all. Now I recognized it for what it was. Armor. Sloane used her intelligence the way other people used sarcasm or silence. As a barrier between herself and a world that had never quite made sense to her. I wanted to ask you something, I said, keeping my voice casual, about the social pairing. Protocol. Her eyebrows rose fractionally. Ask away. Though I should warn you, if you're looking for romantic advice, you've come to the wrong person. My expertise is in code, not Cupid. Actually, it's about the code I'm interested in. Now I had her full attention. Sloane turned in her chair to face me, her expression shifting from mild interest to sharp focus. What kind of questions? I'd spent the past week preparing for this conversation, crafting my approach carefully. Sloane was too smart to be manipulated, too cynical to be fooled by false friendship. The only way to get her help was to offer her what she valued most, a puzzle worth solving. Have you ever looked at the pairing data? Like really looked at? Define really looked. The underlying metrics. The compatibility scores. The algorithm's reasoning for specific matches. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. The patterns. Sloane's eyes narrowed. What patterns? That's what I'm hoping you can tell me, because I've been paying attention, in some things. Don't add up, it wasn't entirely a lie. Even in my first life, there had been inconsistencies I'd noticed, but dismissed. Couples who seemed mismatched despite high compatibility scores. Perfect matches that fell apart within weeks. Students who were never paired with anyone, despite being obviously compatible with multiple people. For instance, I continued my match with Blaine. 97% compatibility. Highest in school history. And I barely knew him before the algorithm matched us. We'd never had a real conversation, never shared interests or values or goals. So where did those metrics come from? Sloane was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming against the desk. I could practically see the gears turning in her head, the way she was processing the implications of what I was suggesting. "You think the data was fabricated?" she said finally. "I think the data was optimized. It's for something other than genuine compatibility. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious system. One that affects every student in this school. Don't you think it deserves serious scrutiny?" She studied my face, looking for cracks in my composure, signs that this was some kind of elaborate prank or social experiment. "Why are you asking me this?" "Because you're the only person I know who could actually find the truth. And because..." I hesitated, then decided to go with partial honesty, because I have a feeling I'm not the only person being manipulated by this system. That got her attention. Sloane leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You have evidence? I have suspicions. And observations. And a really strong feeling that someone with administrative access has been playing puppet master with people's lives. Administrative access." She repeated the words slowly, thoughtfully. "That would require serious privileges, faculty level or higher. Or someone with connections to faculty or administration, someone whose family has influence with the school board." I didn't say Chloe's name, but I could see the moment Sloane made the connection. Her expression shifted, calculation replacing curiosity. "This is dangerous territory," she said quietly. "If you're right, if someone is manipulating the system for personal gain, they're not going to appreciate being exposed. Are you saying you won't help?" Sloane was quiet for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the screen in front of her. When she spoke again, her voice was steady and sure. "I'm saying I'll look into it, but if we're going to do this, we do it right. No half measures, no amateur hour. We build an airtight case with documentation and proof that can't be dismissed or covered up." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If we find what I think we're going to find, things are going to get very complicated very quickly." She turned back to her keyboard, fingers already flying across the keys. "Give me a week. I'll run some preliminary queries, see what anomalies turn up in the data. But Tessa? Yeah, whatever you're really up to, whatever game you're playing, be careful. Systems like this don't exist in a vacuum. They're built by people, maintained by people, and protected by people who have a vested interest in keeping them operational." I stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Sloane, why are you willing to help me?" She didn't look up from her screen, but I caught the ghost of a smile on her lips. "Because I've always hated things that pretend to be objective when they're actually subjective. And because your boyfriend's ex-girlfriend asked me the same questions about 6 months ago, my heart stopped." "Naomi asked you about the pairing?" "System. She wanted to know how the algorithm worked, specifically how it determined compatibility, and why certain people never seemed to get matched with anyone." Sloane's fingers paused on the keyboard. I told her I'd look into it, but then she graduated, and I got distracted by other projects. Maybe it's time I followed through on that promise. I left the computer lab with my mind racing. Naomi had been investigating the system. She'd suspected something was wrong, just like I had. The thought sent a thrill through me, not just because it meant I was right to trust her, but because it meant she was even smarter and more perceptive than I'd realized. As I walked back toward the dormitories, I caught sight of a familiar figure sitting on a bench near the fountain. Naomi was there, a book open in her lap, but she wasn't reading. She was watching the water cascade down the marble tiers, her expression distant and thoughtful. I approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Mind if I sit?" She looked up, surprise flickering across her features. "Shouldn't you be somewhere with Prince Charming? At a student council meeting? Something about fundraising for?" "The winter formal?" "Ah yes, the winter formal. The annual celebration of enforced social hierarchy disguised as a dance." I laughed despite myself. "That's one way to put it. It's the only way to put it if you're being honest." I sat down beside her, close enough to smell that vanilla and old book scent that was becoming familiar. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask. I might not answer." What made you suspicious of the pairing system? The question hung in the air between us. Naomi closed her book and set it aside, her fingers drumming against the bench. You really want to know? I really want to know, because for 8 months I watched it systematically isolate anyone who didn't fit the approved social mold. Students who were too weird, too poor, did different, they just never got matched, ever. And when they did manage to form organic connections, those relationships mysteriously fell apart after the next algorithm update, including yours with Blaine. Her laugh was bitter, especially mine with Blaine. We were happy, you know, really happy. And then suddenly the system decided we were incompatible, and he started getting suggestions for other matches. More suitable matches? Like me? Like you? We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of that admission settling between us. Finally, Naomi spoke again. The thing is, I don't think Blaine was in on it. Not consciously, anyway. I think he genuinely believed the algorithm knew better than his own feelings. That's what makes it so insidious. It convinces people that their authentic emotions are wrong. And he never told anyone? Never tried to expose it? Who would? I tell who would believe the bitter ex-girlfriend over a sophisticated AI system backed by the most prestigious boarding school in the country. I understood then why she'd seemed so resigned, so isolated. She'd seen the truth, but had no way to prove it, no allies to help her fight it. She'd been left to watch from the sidelines as the system continued its manipulations, powerless too. Stop it. What if I told you I believed you? I said quietly. What if I told you I wanted to help? Naomi turned to look at me, her green eyes searching my face. I'd ask why. Why would the girl who got everything she wanted risk it all to help someone like me? Because you tried to save me once, and I was too blind to see it. Because you're the only person who's ever looked at me and seen something real. Because in another life, another timeline, I loved you and lost you, and I'm not going to make that mistake again. Because I said instead, some things are more important than getting what you think you want. The greenhouse behind the academic buildings was technically off limits after hours. The lock had been broken for months, and the administration either didn't know or didn't care. It had become an unofficial sanctuary for students who needed to escape the constant surveillance and social performance that defined life at Lennox Academy. Which was why I wasn't entirely surprised to find Naomi there at midnight, sitting cross-legged. Among the orchids, with a cup of tea cooling in her hands. You're becoming predictable, she said without looking up as I slipped through the door. This is the 3rd time this week you found me here. Maybe you're becoming predictable too. Touché. She gestured to the empty space beside her. On the wooden bench, as though I should warn you, being seen with me too often might damage your carefully cultivated reputation. I sat down anyway, close enough that our knees almost touched. What if I told you I don't care about my reputation? I'd say you're either lying or delusional. Nobody at this school doesn't care about their reputation. It's literally the only currency that matters here. She wasn't wrong. Lennox Academy operated on a complex social economy where your value was determined by your connections, your achievements, and your ability to play the game according to unwritten rules. In my first life, I'd been obsessed with maintaining my position in that hierarchy. Now, the whole system seemed as fragile and artificial as the controlled climate in this greenhouse. What if I told you, I said carefully, that I think the whole system is rigged? That someone's been manipulating the algorithm for their own purposes? Naomi's hand stilled on her teacup. I'd ask if you have proof. I'd say I'm working on it. She turned to face me fully, her expression serious. Tessa, what are you doing? It was the first time she'd said my name like that, not with the careful distance she usually maintained, but with something that sounded like concern. Like she actually cared what happened to me. I'm trying to understand something that doesn't make sense. Like why the most sophisticated matchmaking algorithm ever created paired me with someone I have nothing in common with. Maybe because the algorithm isn't as sophisticated as advertised. Maybe because it was designed to serve purposes other than actual compatibility. Like what purposes? Naomi was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the condensation of her teacup. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Like maintaining the social order. like ensuring that certain families stay connected to certain other families, like making sure that people with money and influence don't accidentally fall in love with people who might threaten their carefully constructed world. You really think that's what happened? With you and Blaine? I know that's what happened. Her voice was matter of fact, but I could hear the pain underneath it. Real together, not some algorithmic suggestion. We talked about everything: books, movies, our fears, our dreams. He knew that I wanted to study environmental law, that I wrote poetry in my spare time, that I was terrified of ending up like my mother. What happened to your mother? She fell in love with someone above her station? Someone whose family decided she wasn't appropriate marriage material? Someone who chose social acceptance over love? Naomi's smile was bitter. History repeats itself, apparently. But Blaine wasn't forced to choose the algorithm over you. He chose it, did he? Or was he just convinced that the algorithm knew something he didn't? That his feelings for me were somehow flawed or incomplete? She shook her head. That's the beauty of the system. It doesn't have to force people to make choices. It just has to convince them that their natural instincts are wrong. I thought about Blaine's easy acceptance of our pairing. The way he'd embraced the idea that we were destined for each other. Had he ever questioned it? Had he ever wondered what he'd given up when he walked away from Naomi? Did you love him? I asked. I thought I did. But maybe I just loved the idea of being loved by someone like him, someone golden and perfect, and completely out of my league. You're not out of anyone's league. The words came out more forcefully than I'd intended, and Naomi's eyes widened with surprise. We stared at each other for a moment, the air between us suddenly charged with something I couldn't quite name. Tessa, she said softly, what's really going on here? What do you mean? I mean, 3 weeks ago you were the princess of Lennox Academy, perfectly matched with the perfect boyfriend, living the perfect algorithmic life. And now you're sitting in an off-limits greenhouse at midnight, asking me about conspiracy theories and telling me I'm not out of anyone's league. She was right to be suspicious. The shift in my behavior was too dramatic, too sudden to be easily explained. I needed to give her something real, something that would satisfy her questions without revealing the whole impossible truth. Can I tell you something? I said. Something I've never told anyone. She nodded. I don't think I've ever been in love. Not really. I've been infatuated. I've been flattered. I've been excited by the idea of being chosen. But love? Actual love? I shook my head. I don't think I even know what that feels like. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you do know. I think you know what it feels like to love someone so much that their happiness matters more than your own. And I think that's what you felt for Blaine, even if it wasn't reciprocated the way it should have been. Naomi's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I thought she might cry. Instead, she laughed a sound that was half bitter, half relieved. You know what's funny? Everyone thinks I'm bitter about Blaine. They think I can't let go, that I'm jealous of you. I'm some kind of crazy ex-girlfriend who can't accept reality. But that's not it at all. No, it's not. I'm not bitter about Blaine. I'm angry about the system that made him believe his feelings for me were wrong. I'm furious about the way it manipulates people into thinking they're making free choices, when they're really just following a script. And you're lonely? I said quietly. She turned to look at me, her green eyes bright with unshed tears. I'm lonely. Because when you've seen how the game really works, it's hard to trust anyone who's still playing it. Even me. Especially you. You're the girl who got everything I lost. The girl who represents everything the system wants me to believe I can never have. But that's not who I really am. No. I turned to face her fully, our knees touching now. Who I really am is someone who's tired of performing, someone who's tired of being told what to want and who to love and how to feel. Someone who thinks that maybe the girl everyone dismissed, as bitter and difficult, might actually be the smartest person in the room. Naomi went very still. Tessa, someone who thinks that maybe the system got it wrong. Maybe the algorithm that paired me with Blaine should have paired me with someone else entirely. The words hung in the air between us, electric and dangerous. I could see the moment Naomi realized what I was saying, the way her eyes widened and her breath caught. You don't mean that, she whispered. Don't I? We're with Blaine. You're happy with Blaine. The whole school knows. The whole school knows what they've been told to see. But that doesn't make it real. I reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her hand. Her skin was warm and soft, and I could feel the slight tremor in her fingers. "Naomi," I said, "what if I told you that the girl you think I am, the perfect princess with the perfect life, what if I told you she was just as much of a fabrication as the algorithm that created her? I'd ask who you really are. Someone who sees you, really sees you. Not the bitter ex-girlfriend, not the difficult girl, not the cautionary tale. I see someone brilliant and brave and beautiful who tried to warn me about something I was too blind to see. When did I warn you?" My heart stopped. I'd revealed too much, referenced something that hadn't happened yet in this timeline. But Naomi was looking at me with such intensity, such hope, that I couldn't take it back. "You will," I said simply. "When the time is right, you'll try to save me from my own mistakes. And this time, I'm going to listen." She stared at me for a long moment, her green eyes searching my face. Then slowly she turned her hand palm up and interlaced her fingers with mine. "This is dangerous," she said. "I know. If Chloe finds out, let me worry about Chloe. If the algorithm flags this as an anomaly, then we'll deal with that too." She squeezed my hand, and I felt something shift between USA wall coming down, a door opening, a possibility being born. "Tessa," she said, her voice barely audible over the whisper of the greenhouse ventilation system. "Yeah, I think I've been waiting for you to see me for a very long time." I lifted our joined hands and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. Then I guess we both know what that feels like now. What, being tired of waiting? The winter? Formal planning committee met every Thursday in the Student Center's main conference room. A glass-walled space designed to showcase the democratic process of student government in action. In reality, it was theater, carefully choreographed performance where predetermined decisions were presented as collaborative outcomes. I sat at the oval table surrounded by the usual suspects, student council officers, social committee chairs, and carefully selected representatives from each grade level. And presiding over it all, with her perfectly straightened hair and color-coordinated outfit, was Chloe. "So we're agreed on the theme," she was saying, marking something off on her tablet with a flourish. Winter Wonderland meets modern romance. Classic elegance with technological enhancement. "What kind of technological enhancement?" asked Marcus, a junior who'd made the mistake of asking substantive questions at these meetings. Chloe's smile was sharp and bright. "I'm so glad you asked. We're going to be partnering with the computer science department to create real-time compatibility readings for all attendees. Couples will be able to see their algorithmic match percentage displayed on interactive screens throughout the venue." My stomach clenched. This was new, something that hadn't happened in my original timeline. Another layer of manipulation, another way to reinforce the system's authority over personal choice. "Isn't that kind of invasive?" Marcus persisted. "What if people don't want their relationships quantified and displayed?" "Oh, Marcus." Chloe's laugh was like crystal breaking. "This isn't about judgment, it's about celebration. We're celebrating the success of the social pairing protocol and the beautiful relationships it's helped create. Relationships like mine and Blaine's, presumably." I glanced across the table at him, noting the way he nodded approvingly at Chloe's explanation. He was sitting close enough that I could smell his colon something expensive and woody that probably cost more than most people's textbooks. "I think it sounds incredible," he said, his voice carrying that easy confidence that made people want to agree with him. "Tessa and I would be honored to be featured as one of the success stories." All eyes turned to me, waiting for my response. The old Tessa would have blushed and stammered something about being honored to represent the algorithm's success. The new Tessa felt the walls closing in. "It sounds interesting," I managed, "though I wonder if we should consider students who aren't in algorithmically paired relationships. We wouldn't want them to feel excluded." Chloe's expression didn't change, but I caught the flash of annoyance in her eyes. "Of course we'll be inclusive. The displays will show compatibility readings for any two people who request them. Think of it as entertainment, like those personality quizzes everyone loves to take. But with real consequences," I said quietly. "What was that?" "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." The meeting continued, but I found it impossible to concentrate on flower arrangements and catering options. My mind kept returning to the image of couples lined up at compatibility screens, watching their relationships reduced to percentages and data points. How many people would see low scores and start to doubt their feelings? How many would let the algorithm override their instincts? After the meeting ended, I lingered in the conference room, ostensibly organizing my notes, but really waiting for the crowd to disperse. Blaine had student council business to attend to, which left me with a few precious minutes alone. I was about to leave when Chloe appeared in the doorway. "Walk with me," she said, though it sounded more like a command than a request. We strolled through the student center, past clusters of students, studying and socializing, past the coffee shop where I'd once sat with Mark and Chloe in another lifetime. The memory felt distant now, like something that had happened to someone else. "You seem distracted lately," Chloe said, her voice carefully casual. "Everything okay? Just busy with classes? You know how it is." She nodded, but I could feel her eyes studying my profile. "How are things with Blaine?" "Good. Great, actually. I'm so glad. You two are absolutely perfect together. Everyone says so. Everyone says so. Not you seem happy, or I can see how much you care about each other. Everyone says so, as if public opinion was more relevant than actual emotion." "Chloe," I said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. You ever worry that the algorithm might be wrong? That it might pair people who aren't actually compatible?" She stopped walking, turning to face me with an expression of genuine surprise. "Why would you ask that?" "I don't know, just sometimes I see couples who seem mismatched, despite their high compatibility scores. And sometimes I see people who obviously belong together, but were never paired by the system. Like who?" The question was sharp, probing. I realized I'd walked into dangerous territory, but it was too late to retreat now. No one specific, just an observation. Chloe resumed walking, but I could feel the tension radiating from her. "Tessa, you know I care about you, right? That's why I worked so hard to make sure you got matched with someone worthy of you." "Worked so hard? Not I was so happy when the algorithm matched you, or I was thrilled to see you get paired with." "Blaine worked so hard. I know," I said, "and I'm grateful." "Good, because some people might try to make you doubt what you have. People who are jealous, or bitter, or who have their own agenda." "What do you mean?" "I mean that not everyone at this school has your best interests at heart. Some people would rather see you fail than succeed." We'd reached the main lobby. Now, with its soaring ceiling and inspirational quotes etched into the marble walls, Chloe stopped beside the fountain, her reflection wavering in the water. "Take Naomi Vega, for example," she said, her voice deceptively light. "I've noticed you talking to her lately." My heart started racing, but I kept my expression neutral. "She's in my psychology class, of course. But Tessa, you need to be careful. Issues with the pairing system, with authority, with anyone who has something she wants." "What do you mean?" "I mean, she's never gotten over Blaine. She's convinced herself that their relationship was somehow more real or meaningful than what he has with you. It's quite sad, really. That doesn't sound like the Naomi I know." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and Chloe's eyes sharpened. "The Naomi you know. How well do you know her exactly?" "Not well. I just meant because I'd hate for you to be taken in by her sob story. She's very good at playing the victim, at making people feel sorry for her. But the truth is, she's manipulative and unstable. She was stalking Blaine for months after they broke up, following him around campus, showing up at places he'd mentioned, calling and texting at all hours. It got so bad that we had to involve the administration. I knew she was lying. Every instinct I had screamed that this was fabrication, manipulation, designed to isolate Naomi and keep me away from her. But I couldn't prove it, couldn't call her out without revealing how much I really knew. "I had no idea," I said instead. "Most people don't. We tried to handle it quietly for everyone's sake. But Tessa, if she's been approaching you, if she's been trying to turn you against Blaine or the algorithm or—" She paused, her eyes searching my face. "If she's been filling your head with conspiracy theories about the pairing system, you need to tell me. Why would she do that? 'Cause she's convinced that the system is rigged against her. Is that She deserves to be paired with someone like Blaine instead of being relegated to the margins where she belongs. The casual cruelty in Chloe's voice was breathtaking. She spoke about Naomi like she was discussing an infestation, something unpleasant that needed to be contained and eliminated. "I see," I said carefully. "I hope you do. Because I'd hate for her delusions to affect your relationship with Blaine. You've worked so hard to build something beautiful together. Worked so hard?" There it was again, that telling phrase that revealed the truth beneath the performance. "Of course not," I said. "Blaine and I are solid." Chloe smiled, the expression warm and genuine looking. "I'm so glad. Sometimes I think the algorithm knew exactly what it was doing when it paired you two. You bring out the best in each other." She kissed my cheek and walked away, leaving me standing alone beside the fountain with the sound of rushing water drowning out the beating of my heart. As I watched her go, I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message. "We need to talk. Tonight. Greenhouse. It's urgent." Sent the text to Naomi and then deleted it from my phone, a precaution that felt both paranoid and necessary. Because if Chloe was lying about Naomi stalking Blaine, I was certain she was capable of lying about anything. And if she was monitoring my communications, if she had access to more than just the pairing algorithm, then we're all in more danger than I'd realized. The game was escalating, and I wasn't sure any of us were prepared for what came next. The greenhouse was dark when I arrived, moonlight filtering through the glass panels and casting everything in silver and shadow. For a moment I thought Naomi hadn't gotten my message, or worse, that she'd decided not to come. Then I saw her sitting in our usual spot among the orchids, her dark silhouette barely visible against the foliage. "You came," I said, slipping through the door and securing it behind me. "You said it was urgent." Her voice was careful, guarded. "What's wrong?" I sat down beside her, close enough to see the wariness in her green eyes. "Chloe knows we've been talking." "Of course she does. She knows everything that happens at this school." "No, this is different." She pulled me aside. "After the committee meeting tonight, started asking pointed questions about you, about whether you'd been filling my head with conspiracy theories." Naomi went very still. "What did you tell her?" I played dumb. "But Naomi, she said things about you. Horrible things. About you stalking Blaine? About the administration having to get involved? Let me guess." Naomi's laugh was bitter. "I was calling him at all hours, following him around campus, couldn't accept that our relationship was over." "You've heard this before. I've lived this before." It's Chloe's standard playbook to discredit anyone who threatens her narrative by painting them as unstable, obsessed, dangerous. She turned to face me, her expression fierce. "The question is, do you believe her?" "No." The word came out without hesitation. "I don't believe her." "Why not?" "Everyone else does. Because I've been watching you. Really watching you. And you're not obsessed with Blaine. You barely look at him when he's in the room. You're not unstable. You're probably the most clear-eyed person at this school, and you're not dangerous." I paused, my heart hammering against my ribs, at least not to the people who don't deserve it. Something shifted in Naomi's expression, a wall coming down that I hadn't even realized was there. "Tessa?" she said quietly. "What are you doing?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're supposed to be with him. You're supposed to be living the perfect algorithmic life, planning your perfect algorithmic future. Instead, you're sitting in an abandoned greenhouse at midnight telling me you don't believe the lies your best friend spread about me." She was right to question it. The transformation in my behavior was too sudden, too complete to be easily explained. But I was tired of half-truths and careful revelations. Tired of protecting a secret that was eating me alive from the inside out. "Can I tell you something?" it said, "something that's going to sound completely insane? After the week I've had, I'm prepared for anything." I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "What if I told you that I know things? Things I shouldn't know. Things that haven't happened yet." I'd ask what kind of things, like the fact that you tried to warn me about Blaine once. In the bathroom after he'd flirted with someone else right in front of me. You told me he wasn't worth it, and I turned on you, called you jealous and bitter, and accused you of trying to sabotage my relationship. Naomi's eyes widened. "When? Did this happen?" "It didn't. Not yet." but it will if I let things play out the way they're supposed to. I reached for her hand, gratified when she didn't pull away. What if I told you that I've seen how this story ends? That I know what Chloe is really capable of, what the algorithm is really designed to do, what happens to people who try to fight the system? I'd say you're scaring me. Good, because you should be scared. We all should be. I squeezed her hand, drawing strength from the contact. Naomi, the pairing system isn't just rigged, it's weaponized. It's designed to maintain social hierarchies, to ensure that power stays concentrated in the hands of families like Chloe's. Anyone who threatens that system, what happens to them? I thought about Jace, about the way the algorithm had isolated him, manipulated his relationships, driven him to a breaking point he couldn't come back from. I thought about my own death, the way betrayal and heartbreak had sent me running blindly. Into traffic, they get destroyed, I said simply. Systematically, methodically, completely. Naomi was quiet for a long moment, her thumb tracing patterns across my knuckles. When she spoke again, her voice was steady but sad. So what are you saying, that we're doomed? That there's no point in fighting? No, I'm saying the opposite. I turned to face her fully, our knees touching, saying that I've seen what happens when people fight this system alone, in isolation, without allies or support. And I'm saying that this time, things are going to be different. Because of Sloan. Because of you. The words hung in the air between us, electric and dangerous. I could see the moment Naomi realized what I was really saying, the way her breath caught, and her eyes searched my face. Tessa, in another life, another timeline, I would have dismissed you as bitter and jealous. I would have chosen Chloe's version of reality over your truth. I would have let the system use me too, hurt you, and then I would have paid the price for my own blindness. In this life? She asked. In this life I choose you, I said. The silence that followed was deep and resonant, broken only by the low hum of the greenhouse's ventilation and the distant sound of students returning to their dorms. Naomi's eyes welled with tears, and for a brief moment I thought she might cry. But instead, she laughed, a sound laced with wonder and disbelief. You're serious, she said. You actually mean it. I nodded. Dead serious, she stared at me. Even if it means going against everything you've been told to want, everyone you've been taught to trust? I met her gaze, especially because of that. She studied me in silence, her green eyes probing for any hint of doubt. Then slowly, she reached up and cupped my cheek. This won't be easy, she said. Chloe's not going to let go without a fight. The system won't just accept your defection. There will be fallout. I nodded again. I know, you could lose everything. Your status, your friendships, your place here. I know, I repeated. And Blaine was never mine. He was just another pawn in Chloe's game, a tool to steer the narrative. Naomi's thumb grazed my cheek, and something long buried inside me stirred painfully, beginning to uncoil. What if you're wrong? She whispered. Well, if I'm not worth all of this, then I'll find that out the hard way. But Naomi, my entire life has been about compliance, being told who to love, how to feel, what to want. I want to choose for myself, even if it's a mistake. She asked. Especially then, I replied. She leaned in close, her forehead nearly touching mine. And if I told you I've been waiting for someone to choose me, not because a program said they should, but because they saw everything and still thought I was worth it, then I'd tell you the wait is over. The kiss that followed was gentle at first, and certain, a question. But as I leaned into it, let myself respond, it grew into something deeper, a vow, a turning point. When we finally pulled apart, Naomi rested her forehead against mine, her breath uneven. This changes everything, she whispered. I know. Chloe will come after us, both of us. Let her try. You don't understand. AC has power connections, access to systems we can't even comprehend. She can ruin us. Then we make the first move. Naomi pulled back slightly, studying my expression as hers shifted into something sharper. What are you thinking? That it's time we stop playing defense, I said. It's time to go on the offensive. How? By giving. her what she wants. I'll be the perfect girlfriend. I'll play the role right up until the moment we expose everything. She frowned. That's dangerous. So is anything that matters. Naomi was quiet, watching me closely. Then she smiled, fierce and radiant. When do we start? The audit results arrived Tuesday morning, hand-delivered to Dr. Rose's office in a sealed envelope marked with the Academy's crest. We knew. Because Sloan had hacked into the scheduling system and found the meeting had been pushed up 3 days, a sign that someone was nervous about what might surface. Emergency protocol, Sloan explained, as we clustered around her laptop. Faculty fast-track a review of algorithmic processes. It locks everything. No deletions, no edits, no archiving. The data is frozen until the audit is done, which means Chloe's tampering is preserved, Naomi added, and now she can't cover it up. Exactly. I've been monitoring the metadata, and there's been a flurry of suspicious activity on admin accounts. She's scrambling, trying to erase digital footprints. A sense of grim satisfaction settled over me. We'd forced Chloe out of her calculated comfort zone and into reactive territory. But I also knew nothing is more dangerous than a cornered predator. What's our timeline? I asked. Dr. Rowe wants a full presentation by Friday afternoon. That gives us 3 days to compile everything and make our case airtight. 3 days. The winter formal was still set for Saturday, which meant Chloe's big reveal. The compatibility display would go live just as her entire scheme came crashing down. It was almost poetic. There's more, Sloan said, frowning. Been accessing files that go way beyond the pairing system. Disciplinary records, family income data, medical histories. Her voice trailed off, the weight of it settling over us like fog. Chloe wasn't just manipulating relationships, she was controlling lives. She's building ammunition, Naomi said grimly, looking for leverage against anyone who might expose her, including us, especially us. I thought about my own file, wondering what secrets Chloe might have uncovered. My family's financial struggles after my father's business failed, my mother's prescription anxiety medication, the fact that I'd been seeing the school counselor after Jace's death in my original timeline. Then we need to move faster, I said. Force her hand before she has time to weaponize whatever she's found. How? I'd been thinking about this. Moment for weeks, planning and replanning the confrontation that would bring everything into the open. But now, faced with the reality of it, I felt the weight of what I was about to set in motion. By making her think she's won. By giving her the perfect opportunity to demonstrate exactly how the system really works. That evening, I found Blaine. In the student center, studying for his European history exam, with a kind of focused intensity that made him look almost scholarly. For a moment, watching him bent over his textbook with his blonde hair falling across his forehead, I could almost understand why my original self had been so infatuated with him. He was undeniably attractive, unquestionably charming, and when he smiled at me as I approached his table, there was genuine warmth in his expression. "Hey, beautiful," he said, closing his book and giving me his full attention. Perfect timing. I was just thinking about taking a break. Actually, I said, settling into the chair across from him. I wanted to talk to you about something. Sounds serious? It is, kind of. I arranged my expression into something appropriately vulnerable. It's about the winter formal. What about it? You having second thoughts about the dress? Because I told you, the blue one is perfect, not the dress. The compatibility displays. Blaine's expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. What about them? I'm nervous, I guess, about having our relationship analyzed and quantified in front of the entire school. Why? Our compatibility score is literally the highest in school history. If anything, it'll be a celebration. But what if something goes wrong? What if the system glitches, or shows a lower score than expected, or, let my voice trail, off, allowing just a hint of insecurity to creep in? Blaine reached across the table and took my hand, his touch warm and reassuring. Tessa, that's not going to happen.
Oh.
The algorithm doesn't make mistakes. How can you be so sure? 'Cause I trust the system. Because it brought us together, didn't it? He squeezed my hand. The algorithm saw something in us that we might not have seen in ourselves. Recognized that we were perfect for each other before we even had our first real conversation. Perfect for each other. The phrase made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to smile. "You're right," I said. "I'm just being silly." "Not silly, just human." He brought my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles. "But Tessa, you don't have anything to worry about. Our match is solid, real. Nothing the system could reveal would change that. Nothing the system could reveal." If only he knew how prophetic those words would prove to be. Later that night, I met Naomi in our usual spot in the greenhouse. She was waiting for me among the orchids, but tonight she seemed different, tense, almost vibrating with nervous energy. "It's done," I said, sitting down beside her. "I planted the seed with Blaine, expressed just enough concern about the compatibility displays to make him want to prove how solid our relationship is. Do you think he'll push for us to be featured prominently? Think his ego won't let him do anything else? The chance to publicly demonstrate that he has the most algorithmically perfect girlfriend in school will demand center stage." Naomi was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming against the wooden bench. "Tessa, are you sure about this?" "Once we trigger the exposure protocol, there's no going back. Everything comes out, including us. I know. The whole school will see that we've been meeting secretly, that you've been questioning the system, that you—" She paused, her cheeks flushing. "That you kissed me." "Good. Let them see, even if it destroys your reputation, even if it makes you a pariah, especially then." I reached for her hand, threading our fingers together. "Naomi, I've spent my entire life trying to be what other people wanted me to be. The perfect daughter, the perfect student, the perfect girlfriend. And all it got me was a life that felt like a cage. And now I want to be imperfect. I want to be real. I want to be yours." She turned to look at me, her green eyes bright with tears. "You know that once this happens, once we expose Chloe in the system, everything changes. We won't be able to hide anymore. I don't want to hide anymore. And if I told you that I love you, that I've been falling in love with you since the first day you sat next to me in psychology class, since the first time you looked at me like I was worth seeing," the words hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath and making my heart race. In my original timeline, no one had ever said those words to me and meant them. "Not really. Not like this," I'd say, I whispered, "that I love you too, and that I'm tired of pretending otherwise." The kiss was different this time, deeper, more desperate, full of all the things we couldn't say out loud. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard, and I could see the exact moment Naomi made her decision. "Okay," she said, "let's burn it all down. Together. Together." As we sat there in the moonlight, hands clasped and hearts racing, I thought about the girl I'd been in my original timeline, naive, trusting, desperate for approval. She would never have believed that she could feel this brave, this certain, this alive. She would never have imagined that love could feel like revolution. But then again, she'd never met Naomi Vega. "Friday," I said, "at the formal. When the compatibility displays go live." "Friday," Naomi agreed. Game over. The winter formal at Lennox Academy was always an exercise in controlled, extravagant, but not ostentatious, sophisticated, but not pretentious, the kind of event that would photograph well for the school's marketing materials while reinforcing the institution's reputation for tasteful excellence. This year, with the addition of Chloe's technological enhancements, the ballroom had been transformed into something that looked like a cross between a fairy tale and a science fiction movie. Interactive compatibility displays lined the walls, their screens pulsing with soft blue light. Couples could approach any terminal, scan their student ID cards, and watch their algorithmic match percentage appear in real time, accompanied by a breakdown of their psychological compatibility metrics. It was exactly as invasive and performative as I'd expected, and judging by the clusters of students gathered around each screen, exactly as popular as Chloe had hoped. I stood near the entrance in my midnight blue dress, the one Blaine had insisted was perfect, watching the crowd with the detached fascination of someone observing a social experiment. Which in a way, I was, because tonight everything was going to change. You look incredible, Blaine said, appearing at my elbow with 2 glasses of sparkling cider. He looked every inch the golden boy in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his blonde hair artfully styled, his smile bright enough to power the compatibility displays. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself, shall we? He offered me his arm, gesturing toward the nearest compatibility terminal. I believe we have a reputation to maintain. A reputation. It's not a relationship to celebrate, not feelings. To explore a reputation to maintain, the distinction would have hurt once upon a time. Now, it just confirmed everything I already knew about the boy I was supposed to love. We approached the central display screen, the largest and most prominent of all the terminals. A small crowd had already gathered, students eager to witness the algorithmic perfection that was Tessa and Blaine. I could see Chloe near the back of the group, her expression radiating satisfaction and anticipation. Ladies and gentlemen, Blaine announced with theatrical flair, prepare to witness the power of true algorithmic love. He scanned his ID card first, and his profile appeared on the screen photograph. Basic stats, personality metrics displayed, in colorful charts and graphs. Then I scanned mine, and for a moment everything proceeded exactly as expected. Our photos appeared side by side, our compatibility scores began calculating, and the crowd murmured with appreciation. 97% compatible. The highest match in school history. Incredible, someone whispered. They're literally perfect for each other, added another voice.
Ow.
But then something went wrong. Instead of stopping at our compatibility breakdown, the system kept running. Additional data began flooding the screen administrative override records. Manual pairing adjustments, fabricated psychological profiles. And at the bottom of everything, in stark black text, algorithmic manipulation detected. The murmur of appreciation turned to confused silence, then to sharp intakes of breath as people began to understand what they were seeing. What's happening? Blaine demanded, his voice tight with panic. Why is it showing all this? I have no idea, I lied, watching Chloe's face go white across the room. Maybe it's a glitch. But it wasn't a glitch. It was Sloane's masterpiece. Virus she'd planted in the compatibility display software that would activate when specific ID combinations were scanned. The virus was designed to do exactly what was happening now. Expose every manipulation, every override. Every lie that had gone into creating our supposedly perfect match. Match fabrication protocols activated, the screen announced in bold letters. Administrative user, C. Ardent. Override authority, senatorial access codes. The crowd erupted. Students were pulling out their phones, recording everything, sharing it instantly across social media platforms. I could hear fragments of conversation, fake, rigged, conspiracy, spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. Turn it off, Chloe hissed, pushing through the crowd toward the terminal. Someone turn it off now. But it was too late. The virus had already begun spreading to the other compatibility displays, revealing manipulation after manipulation, exposing the hidden architecture of control that had governed every pairing. Every rejection, every social alignment at Lennox Academy. This is impossible, Blaine said, staring at the screen in horrified fascination. The algorithm doesn't lie. It can't lie. The algorithm isn't lying, I said quietly. The algorithm is finally telling the truth. He turned to look at me, confusion and dawning suspicion warring in his expression. Tessa, what, ladies and gentlemen? A new voice called out. Cutting through the chaos, Dr. Rowe had entered the ballroom, flanked by Principal Whitmore and several other faculty members. Her expression was grim, but unsurprised. I'm afraid we need to shut down the compatibility displays immediately. Why? Demanded Marcus, the junior who'd questioned the system during committee meetings. What's wrong with them? Nothing is wrong with the displays themselves, Dr. Rowe replied, her voice carrying easily through the ballroom. They're functioning exactly as designed. Which is why we need to discuss what they're revealing. Crowd began to understand that this wasn't a malfunction or a prank. This was an exposure, a revelation, a moment of truth that had been months in the making. I don't understand, Blaine said, his voice plaintive. Our relationship is real. Our feelings are real. How can the algorithm be fake? I turned to face him fully, feeling a strange mixture of pity and satisfaction. The algorithm isn't fake, Blaine. It's just not what you thought it was. What do you mean? I mean, it was never designed to create genuine compatibility. It was designed to maintain social control? It's ridiculous, is it? I gestured toward the screens, which were still displaying evidence of manipulation and override. Look around you. Look at the patterns. It gets paired with whom? Who gets left out? Who gets isolated and marginalized? It's not random, Blaine. It's intentional. You're talking crazy, am I? Oh, or am I finally talking sense? The crowd had begun to thin as faculty members ushered students toward the exits. But I could see Naomi near the edge of the ballroom, watching everything unfold. With a mixture of pride and apprehension, our eyes met across the room, and she gave me the smallest nod of encouragement. Tessa, Blaine said, grabbing my arm as I started to walk away. What's happening to us? To our relationship? I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up. To his face, he looked young suddenly and lost, and completely out of his depth. Our relationship, I said gently, was never real to begin with. It was a performance, Blaine. A really convincing performance, but a performance nonetheless. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me. What do you love about me? Not what the algorithm told you to love, not what made sense on paper, but what you actually love. The silence stretched between us, long and telling. He opened his mouth several times as if to speak, but no words came, because there was nothing to say. Our entire connection had been built on algorithmic suggestion and social expectation, not genuine feeling. I thought so, I said softly, as I walked away from him toward Naomi, toward a future that was uncertain but real. I heard Chloe's voice cutting through the chaos. This is sabotage, she was shouting at Dr. Rowe. Someone hacked the system, planted false information, Miss Ardent. Dr. Rowe replied coolly, I think you'll find that everything displayed tonight came directly from your administrative account. Every override, every manipulation, every unauthorized access to student data. It's impossible, is it? Because we've been conducting our own investigation for the past week, and I'm afraid the evidence is quite conclusive. I reached Naomi just as Chloe's voice rose to a shriek of rage and denial. We stood together at the edge of the ballroom, watching the collapse of a system that had seemed so powerful, so permanent, so unassailable. It's over, Naomi said quietly. It's just beginning, I corrected, taking her hand in mine. Because this wasn't just about exposing Chloe's manipulation or bringing down the pairing algorithm. This was about claiming the right to choose our own destinies, to love whom we wanted to love, to be who we really were beneath all the performances and expectations. As we walked out of the ballroom together, I caught one last glimpse of Blaine standing alone near the compatibility display, staring at the evidence of his fabricated romance with the lost expression of someone whose entire worldview had just crumbled. In my original timeline, I would have felt sorry for him. I would have rushed back to comfort him, to make him feel better about the destruction of our artificial relationship. But that was the old Tessa. The new Tessa had learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face the truth about themselves, even when that truth isn't particularly flattering. 3 months later, I sat in the campus coffee shop, the same one where Chloe had once orchestrated my downfall reading acceptance letters. Not from colleges, though. Those had come too. These were different. Fellowship applications, art residencies, programs that would take me far from the algorithmic precision of places like Lennox Academy. The Vermont Studio Center wants you, Naomi said, reading over my shoulder. Her hair smelled like vanilla and possibility. Full scholarship, private studio space, 6 months to create whatever you want. What about you? I asked, knowing she'd applied to the same program. She grinned, pulling her own letter from her bag. Looks like we're both going to Vermont. The irony wasn't lost on me. In my first life, I'd planned my future around Blaine's trajectory, around maintaining the perfect algorithmic couple image. Now, I was choosing a path with the girl everyone had dismissed as difficult and unstable. The girl who'd turned out to be the sanest person I'd ever known? No regrets? Naomi asked, her voice soft. I thought about Chloe, expelled and facing federal charges for misuse of educational algorithms. About Blaine, who'd transferred schools after the scandal broke. About the old Tessa, who died believing she had no choices. None, I said, kissing her temple. I finally chose myself. Sighed. Snow fell on the campus where the social pairing protocol had been permanently deactivated. Students were learning to find each other the old-fashioned way through conversation, compatibility, actual choice. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real, I'd discovered, was infinitely better than perfect. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.